A very good morning to one and all present in the webinar. I am Ankudeep Sethi, Assistant Professor of Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning, and also the host of today's webinar. Today is the sixth session of our webinar series, that is GCAP Insights. First and foremost, I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Bhakti More ma'am, who is going to speak on today's webinar topic, that is Net Zero Energy Building. Ma'am, it is our privilege to have you with us. I would also like to welcome our Managing Trustee, Architect Avani Das Sir, CEO Sahil Das Sir, Principal of Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning, Dr. Architect Digambar Das Sir, Principal of DIA, Dr. Nirmala Devi Ma'am, and our Registrar, Dr. Yahya Mozumdar Sir, and all the participants in the webinar. With this, I would like to give a brief introduction of our college and a short video of our college to you all.
Welcome to Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning. Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning GCAP is the first premier college in Northeast India. The Trust Dona Foundation. Dona Foundation Trust was established on 13 September 2005 by Architect and Managing Director Shri Avani Das, Trustee and Educationist Srimati Daksha Das. Northeast states had no degree course for architecture and students had to travel far and wide for becoming architect and designer. Dona Foundation took it upon themselves to start a college of architecture to fulfill the dreams of these students. Shri Harbesar Das Knowledge Campus promoted by Dona Foundation. Guwahati College of Architecture and Planning is approved by Council of Architecture COA New Delhi, Higher Technical Education Government of Assam and Indian Institute of Town Planning ITPI New Delhi. The college follows UGC guidelines and is affiliated to Astor University. The college was inaugurated by late Torun Gogoi, former Honorable Chief Minister of Assam, on 26 January 2006. GCAP offers Bachelor of Architecture (BR) 5-year degree course, Bachelor of Science in Interior Design (BSc) 3-year degree course, Master of Urban and Regional Planning (MPlan) 2-year degree course. The college has evolved over the years and all batches of students have passed out with a 100% placement track record. The role of an architect is constantly being modified and redefined with the changing scenario in the profession. Apart from having one's own practice, there are various master degree courses such as Urban and Regional Planning, Heritage Conservation, Building Management, Housing, Interior Design, Landscape Design, etc. And after master degree, student may go for higher education like PhD postdoctorate. Architecture, also known as the mother of all arts, not only reflects the society that builds, but it also affects the way that society develops. This means we need architects, planners and designers who can respond to the different needs and values of all sections of the community. And according to the reports of UNESCO published in Times of India, our country needs 3 lakhs of town planners by 2031. The courses are very unique and is a fusion of design, art and technology, demanding a lot of presentation, physical model making, which instills self-confidence, orientership, leadership, team building, time management. So it prepares an individual as a whole to face all challenges and develops problem-solving skills. Career opportunities are limitless. To mention a few, one can become an entrepreneur, freelancer, jobs in architecture town planning firms, jobs in government departments, jobs in teaching and research and development. Our new campus is surrounded by lush greenery amidst beautiful sceneries, creating peaceful atmosphere for students' growth and development. The campus has been named as the Sorbeswar Das Knowledge Campus, inaugurated by Shri Harbananda Honwal, former Chief Minister of Assam and Honorable Minister of Sports, Shipping and Waterways of India. Few visuals of the campus. The main block. The interior spaces. Reception, front desk, studio, lecture hall, faculty room, conference room, multipurpose hall, computer lab, material lab. It consists of small-scale models of sanitary fittings and fixtures and other materials used in building construction. Library. College has a well-equipped library consisting of a wide array of reference books, textbooks, journals, CDs relevant to architecture, urban design, interior design, urban and regional planning, and other fields. Eminent personalities are invited from all over India as visiting faculty and guest lecturers from time to time, like architect Vivi Doshi, architect Nilkan Chaya, architect Sonke Hoff, Shri Pradut Bordoloi, Shri Dhananjay Dek, structural engineer, new age architectural engineer, architect Dheeraj Chalhotra, principal Thakur College of Architecture, guest lectures by architect Rana Mahanta, project director at Creative House Contracting, Dubai. Apart from regular academic courses, we have Sports Week, Annual Fest, Exurbia, Jonasa and study trips to architectural places of interest in India and abroad. First Indo-Malaysian Green Building Workshop on 2016. Workshop by architect Vivek Papat. Workshop on Deepor Bill Geodesign. Annual Fest Exurbia. At GCAP, we strive to provide constant support and foster a positive spirit for holistic development of an individual. Now showing some visuals of students' classworks. GCAP believes that every student has a potential to achieve excellence in any field they choose. Other than academic, there are some visuals. Celebrating World Environment Day, College Main Gate designed by students, students participating in Brahmaputra Beach Carnival Fest 2020, National Service Scheme activities, homemade marks making by students. These are the magazines published by our college as GCAP Voice. At Dona Foundation, we strive to give birth to innovation and creativity for holistic development of an individual. The journey of GCAP continues because it's always about the journey and never about the destination. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I hope you all liked the video and had a glimpse of our college. Now, before proceeding to our today's webinar topic, let me give a brief introduction of our guest speaker, Dr. Bhakti More ma'am. So Dr. Bhakti More ma'am is an academician and an architect and had pursued her doctoral studies from the University of Salford, Manchester, UK. She has over 2 decades of experience in the design industry and academia. Currently, she is the Deputy Chairman and Associate Professor at the School of Design and Architecture, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Dubai campus. Her area of research is urban social sustainability. She is also a coordinator of Manipal Environment and Conservation Student Club that received consecutive award for Best Sustainable Green Campus Audit and Best Sustainable Action Project from Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, and has led research and innovation project for Mahi Dubai for building an affordable and sustainable solar powered house for Solar Decathlon ME. Dr. Bhakti ma'am is an ambassador for Women in Construction for the Big Five Dubai, president of Manipal Employee Resource Group, Diversity and Inclusion Group. She is a mentor for Link Program for Women Mentorship, UAE E7 Daughter of Emirates Program, Open Education for an Open World. Now, I would like to request Dr. Bhakti More ma'am to enlighten us with today's topic of webinar and share her thoughts on net zero energy building. Also, I would like to inform that the chat box will be open to all the participants and they can post their queries in the chat box.
Thank you, Professor Parangam and Guwahati College of Architecture for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to interact with students of architecture and share experiences and whatever information and work that we've done in net zero buildings. So I'll just share my screen. We are talking today about net zero buildings, and my focus would be about combating climate change. We just saw that it is 7 billion people and one planet, and that is where the role of us as architects and designers is very important, very crucial to address what we are talking today about global warming. What you see here is the impact of global warming, which is rise of temperature on the planet. And that is all because of a lot of human activities, burning of fossil fuels, and various other reasons of the development that has taken across the globe. And how do we really combat these changes? And today, as world over, people are talking about climate change. There is also the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which talks about the 1.5 degrees warming that is to be addressed at various levels. And it is not just a group of people, but I think everybody of us have to address the climate change, which is getting a very serious concern world over. So as we go and talk about net zero buildings, I would like to take on some definitions on carbon footprint, carbon emissions. So what you see here is carbon footprint. It is the measure of the impact of activities that each of us do in our daily life, whether it is transportation, whether it is consumption of electricity and various emissions. And that really adds the weight of carbon dioxide emissions. And it's one person adding, and imagine every one of us adding. So that is carbon footprint, which has to be reduced at every scale, whether it is our community or the neighborhood or at city level. And there are various ways to also have strategies to reduce the carbon footprint. So now we're talking about recycling or how to really address the waste generation, how to consume less electricity. Also, as we talk about carbon footprint, one of the important factor is blue carbon. And blue carbon is about something that is already stored in the plants and as sediments. And this is something that a lot of countries are now addressing, that it is mostly found in the coastal and marine ecosystems. And that is where the conservation of it is important, because that they are going to really emit a lot of blue carbon, which is also not good for the environment. And here we come to construction sector. So 38% of the emissions come from the activities which we all are related to. And it is increasing over a period of time. And as more and more urban development is going to happen to address large population, these emissions are going to increase. And one of the important factor of addressing this is to have a sustainable way of constructing. So when we look at the carbon emissions in building, there are ways to address this. One is the upfront carbon, another is operational carbon. So the embodied carbon is nothing but it's the carbon dioxide emitted in producing material right from its raw stage. So building materials play a very important role when it comes to sustainable construction, the way they are produced, the way they are taken to the site, and again, after operations and maintenance, again, how do you recycle them back? So it is a complete life cycle of a material. And the whole cycle for upfront embodied carbon involves even the manufacturing, transportation, how do you really install? And that's where the concept of modular construction is becoming very popular, because then you can avoid a lot of these things happening at the site, where it is transportation and manufacturing processes reduced there at the site, and everything happen off sites. And then during the life cycle of the building, how do you really control your operational carbon? And that is through the right equipments, right technologies, you can consume less energy. So the carbon emissions is something that we all can address in the way we construct our buildings. You're all aware of different rating systems, and a very common world over is LEED. There are also the Indian Green Building Council system. I think you know about it. And there are in the UAE, it is ST-DAMA, and it is Al Safat, the Dubai rating system. Apart from that, there's BRIAM and various other certification. WELL is something also which is getting very popular. So green building rating systems do give us a guideline of the way we should design our building, the right and efficient way the buildings should respond to climate, environment, and reduce carbon emissions. As we talk about LEED, there are different ways of certification. I'm sure you're aware of it, starting with certified points, silver, gold, and platinum. And each of them have their credits where they primarily focus on water, energy, resources, the IEQ, that's the indoor environmental quality, and innovation is the most important thing. I think as students of architecture, what you can really focus on, how do you innovate different ways to design a building to make it more energy efficient and sustainable? And of course, sustainable sites form a very important category of the LEED credit categories. And consumption overall is not about just energy, but it's also about water, also creating your waste management and using the environmental product declarations for the materials that you use. And during COVID, one very important factor that is addressed is the indoor environmental quality. And I think that is something that can be measured and can be the best for the occupants. So as we looked at the definition of net zero building, we would look at also what is nearly zero and what is net plus. So for a nearly zero, it is about the energy that is consumed can cover most of its annual needs. Whereas for a net zero, whatever consumption is there, it should match with whatever production is there at on site. And net plus can give you the surplus exceeding to its annual needs. So it's important to understand for a net zero that the annual energy consumed and the annual energy generated has to have the equivalency. If there is any extra generation, you can always give it back to the grid. So net zero building concept is becoming very popular. And what is it comprising of? So it starts with how do you locate your site? How do you orient the site? So you've all done your climatology and environmental design classes where you understand the basic concept of it. But what is more important is your passive strategies. A net zero building is efficient if you passively design it and you address the way it is oriented in the right way. At the same time, there are also renewable and active strategies, and that's where multidisciplinary role comes is become very important, because you have also a lot of engineering side of it, where you can have the whole concept of net zero coming together, because after passive design strategies, you need to have active systems also to reduce your carbon emission. So net zero definition is a building with net zero consumption. The total amount of energy used is equal to the total amount of renewable energy created on site. That means you're not dependent on an outside energy source, but you are creating your own energy in the site. And I think that is something that I always wonder, why did we not address it years back? Why it took us so much time to come to this kind of concept. So if you look at the passive system, it starts with your building geometry, daylight factor, ventilation, and the right material system selection. When it comes to active, it is about the right energy efficient fittings, the renewable energy concept, what kind of renewable energy would generate on site, using the right metering and optimization so you can measure your net zero performance, and the energy storage, whether you are storing the energy and using it again. So the whole concept comes through the technologies that you use and create various ways to address both passive and active strategies. And I think as architects, we definitely know more of passive strategies, but Also, it's important to study the active strategies because the whole operation and maintenance runs across it and the measurable parts are there. But I would say that 80% net zero buildings can be successful with your passive strategies, and definitely you have to have your right devices and equipments in place where you have to know that what are the new technologies that are there. And with time, technologies changes and they can only be efficient if it used in the right way. So looking at the pathway to the net zero building, very important building geometry. Window to wall ratio will change with the climate. So if you want to have more thermal gain, you will definitely have increase in the window wall ratio. So it is about very much contextual and the passive strategies, shading and daylight analysis. You have a lot of softwares now where you can study and create your shading mask to understand the right shading devices. It's important to also look at thermal insulation. And if your envelope is strong, if you have your good U values, it can definitely give more comfort. Energy user index definitions, that is EUI, is also important to address the amount of heat gain you have per floor area. And then how do you optimize different strategies? How do you use different renewable energy response and then energy storage? And that's why I said it's very important to work with the engineering aspect when you design the net zero building. So looking at certain strategies, you need to have a very high solar reflectance index if you're talking about hot climate so that you don't gain heat much, and how you can create that thermal envelope, because that itself can be a strong barrier if for hot climates to avoid the heat getting in. Sustainable construction are various ways of followed in different countries so that you can reduce a lot of waste and you also can save a lot of time, labor, materials, and you can have less waste management concepts on the site because it's already off site. And I think that's where prefabricated, precast, modular becomes very important. For multiple housing, definitely the concepts of modular run are very adopted. So looking at certain case study, there was one example I have come across where a family has not paid bill for last 8 years. And this is an example in India, in Gujarat, where the architects and the client decided to look at a house which is designed in an efficient way with solar power so that 7.5 kilowatts energy is generated and the house does not require additional electricity from outside to use. So I think this is a very good example, very inspiring. And if it can be done, I think all of us can really get motivated with such examples where using the right materials, natural light, so you don't require a lot of artificial lighting, create that space which is very much user friendly. And at the same time, they've used a lot of materials from the shipwrecking industry. So recycle everything that goes in landfills is not sustainable. So you can reuse those materials to create your structures. So this is the example where they have used solar and also wind power to generate the family's electricity requirements. The other example I would take is from the UAE, where it's the largest and the smartest net zero building coming up in the world. It's under construction by Dubai Electric Water Authority called Al Shira. So this building is designed for over 5,000 and it has over 16,500 square meters of photovoltaic solar panels to produce 3,500 kilowatt hours of energy. And the whole concept is again with IoT and data analysis, where people use app and monitor the building. So the user also is aware about the usage of the building. And they have used a lot of building integrated photovoltaic, that is the BIPV, which is again getting very popular in net zero buildings because that can generate a lot of energy. I'll just show you a video. The other example that is an upcoming building is the first net zero carbon building at the SE Institute in Dubai. So here the building is addressing the embodied carbon emissions, and also there is something called as a offsetting. So that means you're compensating the carbon emissions in the different ways. So one of them is commuting employees, water desalination, and using consumable products that operate in the institute. So the concept of carbon offset is also one area that many buildings are addressing. And the building here will produce its operational energy through various sources and also solar panels as well as the biogas plant. The Expo 2020 happening in Dubai currently, and definitely the sustainability pavilion is one that is something that you can always study. There is another example here, which is by the Serena Architects, the Malaysia Pavilion, which uses the solar PV which are installed on the roof, and the complete building is going to be recycled because it has the concept of sustainable timber. And at the end of the event, this is going to have a complete upcycle. And they have also addressed a lot of energy consumption, at the same time also water usage at minimal. So this is an example which you can study for the Expo 2020. One of the example from the Masdar city is about Eco Villa. What you see here is using the right equipments and devices, as I was talking about. So VRF system is an energy HVAC system, which is very energy efficient and also suggested for the villas at this scale. So here you see the 3D of the villa, which talks about various ways in which the net zero concept can be addressed. So one is using the orientation. So in a climate like UAE, the north-south axis is much preferred so that you can avoid the east and west wall where the sun is harsh, and you can create your shading devices to help the building gain less heat. So one of the important factor here is using the right lighting systems. So daylight factor, at the same time controlling lighting system through simulations, through proper devices, LED lighting. At the same time, you look at the U value, which is 0.1. So 0.1 U value can really create a very high thermal envelope and can create more efficiency. Windows orientation can also be done through simulations. So it's always good to design a net zero building twice. One, where you have your basic design form and you can check on to the analysis, and the second, when you finalize your performance. So this is an example where it is more of understanding how a consumer can really use a villa with different functions. So house functioning is also important to know that you can produce the energy through the right appliances, through the way you can have a user comfort, and how you create it with, compare it with different baselines for any net zero building becomes important. So what you see here, using the right material has reduced the energy consumption, and also the way systems has been very effective. So there is a 36 tons of carbon dioxide annual reduction in the emissions. So these are all parameters with which you can measure the performances. In India, this example by Godrej is one example that you can study for understanding the net zero energy rated building, and what are the main characters of the building, the main elements that can make it energy efficiency. So definitely the way you use your lighting systems, the way you're cooling, because HVAC and lighting take a lot of load, and definitely compare it with a national baseline to understand its performance. One of the example that I would like to share is currently our students are working on the solar decathlon project by Dubai Electric and Water Authority. It offers students to design a net zero building, and it's not just designing but building in 15 days. And I think that's something really challenging, where you have to look at the sustainable construction methods. And so it's under the patronage of the Crown Prince of Dubai, and it's currently happening now. So it's just about constructing a site of 20 by 20, a villa on that site, which is to be considered with the solar envelope, so that you don't go beyond that and take maximum solar efficiency. So the house that we designed is, the team is called Tawazun, which is balance in Arabic. So it's a balance of sustainability, affordability, also work and life balance. It's for the entrepreneur families. So this is just some basic initial renders. So the whole concept of this was definitely first is passive design strategies, where we looked at creating two courtyards, which is very common as in an Emirati house, and then opening the building towards more towards north, and then shading it towards south. So we had a concept of a private courtyard and a public courtyard space, where we can look at the office workspace opening to the north side for the public, and then the private courtyard more for the bedroom and the kitchen area. So you can look at the, these are some initial design concepts. So while we were designing, we looked at a lot of shading mask and areas where we can look at how the building is performing with daylight, and the softwares used were Glasshoppers, Climate Design Studio, and we looked at what best can the light get in when we have areas like workspaces, kitchens, and what appliances are best fit. So these are some summary of the appliances that will consume energy, where it is about your refrigerator, kitchen appliances, HVAC systems, the pumps that are there for the water. Then also there is an electric vehicle that has to be charged, and then various other appliances like washing machine, and everything is measurable. So this is a competition where you have to consume less energy, but at the end it is all monitored. So I think this was a very good example and learning experience for students to be more sustainable. And we have to look at sustainable targets right from constructions, operations, and looking at how we would further look at while we are demolishing, where does this house go? And then understanding the whole concept of what energy can be generated, how do you monitor the whole energy, what are the building monitoring systems used. So that's where the role of information of things comes into place. And then the other factors of using low water budget, having xeriscaping in your project. Also for gray water, we created an innovation by using date palms and then testing it on site. So that can really be a great experience when you're creating a lot of innovative technologies for actual testing. And then zero waste strategies to study the materials that are completely local, also that they get recycled, and how you can reduce the whole waste in the project. So these are some examples of creating benchmark in reducing carbon emissions, and everything is measurable, whether it is use of your energy budget, water budget, how do you look at the life cycle of materials, and at the end, what's the carbon footprint that you will achieve. Wellness and happiness is an important factor because it's a residential space, and you have to look at the overall air filter quality, and also how you could create the user comfort in the space. And these are some analysis. What you see on the right is the building which is actually constructed. It's already up in this week. And looking at the shading mask, so we have to look at the best way that the building can perform with different shading masks. And we tried to create different studies and then finalize. So that's why I said that you have to design it twice, one with your forms that you can then analyze, and the second when you finalize. And then the daylight factor strategies is important. How much shading can create, how the impact is there, how you can avoid glare in certain areas and create the best strategies with analysis. One of the innovation that we looked at is using parametric roof and creating different computational analysis. I think one of the important factor here is when you actually look at what you have designed and how it is performing in reality. So that's where the learning experience is, that you can test your parameters, whatever you have designed as computations on site, how it is performing. So on the left, you see the design, and on the right, you see the reality, how it has been created. And use of softwares, the Grasshopper has been a very important software tool in this whole process. And then creating innovative strategies like vacuum window, where it had a very low U value of 0.4. Otherwise, the U value could be 0.9 or 1.2. And how do you use the right window in the right place? So this was in the south wall that we tried to use. And then creating the thermal insulation through IFIS cladding, which is also giving a thermal envelope and creating, so this is a cladding which has got we use the easy wall technology. I'll show you some videos that tell about the technology. And then again, the monitoring systems, I'll not get into detail of it. It's a lot of, I would say, more of automation kind of it, but we have a team who did the monitoring panels, then using the air zone multi-zoning system. So you have to know what is the right systems that could be adopted. So there was a lot of brainstorming with different industry partners coming into it, and then suggesting as how these systems can be then measurable. And then we had to look at energy consumption of how the building will perform. And there had been certain rules, regulations to use that. So what energy is monitored, how it is used, and it is monitored for 15 days when the project is on, and then it's measurable. We also looked at this model to understand that what we can really ideate at various levels is sustainability, architecture, creating the energy efficient way of designing with renewable energy, and again, making it affordable. What we can nurture is how do you achieve your targets of net zero, at the same time creating the factors of happiness and well-being. What could be then transformed is again through creating networks through academia, industry, and government agencies, because everybody has to at the end work together to achieve the concept of net zero and create the research that is real time. I think that has been a great learning. And there's a lot you can do. If the same project had to be done next year, I'm sure there are more technologies and more innovations that can be done. So these are certain time-lapse videos. So this was constructed on site with the easy panel and steel structures. So this was actually a great experience to learn out of how you could really create this construction in a faster way. And it's, as I said, it's just 15 days of time period, which is very challenging, but we could achieve that. And these are panels which are ready and are constructed on site. And I'll just end with the video so we can take up some question answers. That's about the presentation. We could pick up any question answers.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for such a wonderful presentation on net zero energy building. I hope all the students and participants will be benefited from the knowledge you have shared with us. Now, ma'am, moving on to the question answer round, I would like to read out some of the questions by our participants. One of the question was from Amlan Jyoti Das. He asks, how can a previously constructed building can be transformed into a net zero energy building?
It's a very good question. So there is a lot of retrofitting concepts that have come. So many buildings are there which are not net zero. So how do you make a net zero building is definitely adding to renewable energy. And the concept of retrofitting is something that can be worked out. So you can always create the renewable energy on site, but definitely you have to look at the systems that are operational and then how you can integrate all of them together, but it is possible.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is from Darshana Das. She asks, the future buildings are coming up with high technology features and more digital requirements. In such requirement, how can we aim to implement net zero building?
Yes, so at the end, it is about a payback analysis. So if you're using really very high technologies and you're investing in those technologies, there has to be a payback of what you have invested in. So there is always a analysis that is done that, okay, you've investing a particular amount in those technologies because technologies come at a cost. Then over a long period of time, what have you achieved in operations and maintenance? And what is something that you're saving? So that analysis is also done in various simulations and various strategies when the building is designed. And there are a lot of softwares that are available in simulations that can help you getting your payback period. And I think that's something that is important to know because investment is there at the starting, but there is also a return over a long time.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is from Ankur Jyoti Datta. He is also a faculty. He asks, how can a net zero building sustain or function if design is in economically enriched region? Will it also affect the surrounding environment during the construction phase?
Like, for example, we discussed about one project in India where they have made it net zero, which is very cost effective by using the local material and also from the waste. So I think the right strategies is what can be always adopted because we have always learned from traditional buildings. And net zero is all about passive design. The additional part of the net zero is using the active system. But I think the whole concept comes where we use what has been done traditionally, like using the right thermal envelope or using the way the buildings have been passively designed with window openings. You have a lot of examples in India itself where we have learned from the traditional houses, from palaces, from forts, from a lot of villas in the rural area. And that is all the inspiration that can add, because these are there, we have it. We've just sometimes forgotten to go back to our roots. And I think that's where, if we really use the right strategies, it's just adding those active system and creating our own energy. So I think it's important to know that passive strategies are the key to net zero.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is from architect Joshi Talukdar. She has asked, how can we distinguish between carbon neutrality and net zero?
Yeah, so very important is this factor. These are two important different factors. So in order to be net zero, definitely it has to be equivalent. And carbon neutral is a different concept altogether. I would say that in net zero, your consumption equivalency on site is equal to what you have consumed. So this factor is very different, where if it's all again completely measurable. So the concept here is that you cannot really consume more than what you're generating. So that's something which a net zero is addressed on.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is from Arnav Das. He has asked, is it possible to avail the green material as compared to traditional building materials, since the transportation process may get complex depending on availability?
I think every material has their EPD, that is Environmental Product Declaration. So that is where you have to look at those factors as how it has come on the site, even for making it from raw stage to the production. So EPD values are important. Then in terms of transport to the site, that is where your sustainable construction plays a very important role. As you know, are you going to use materials which are available within the vicinity? Are you going to take those materials? Because as we discussed about LEED, it also talks about the transportation factors from distances. So if you're getting things which are very from a far difference, you're going to lose points in your green building rating anyways. So try to create local materials. So the example that I have just shown about the project, we try to source everything that is available in the local market and not very far from the actual project location. So though we did not have to do an assessment for this project for LEED, but we tried to use, so you see those Mashrubia screens, we have used it from a company that manufactures it from the recycled wood here, and then it creates from that material, the waste material. So it's important to know what, while you're designing, what are the best material available, and that study can really help you.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, one last question. It's from our student Antarika Mohanto. She asks, in the present scenario, there is a lack of skilled laborers in India. So how net zero building will come into play in practical field?
So it's not about the labor skill. Net zero is about strategies. And I think the awareness is very important. You can always upskill people to understand the strategies. So there is always a way to train people to understand. One important thing in general, I would say, to train people to change their mindsets. If there is an awareness, definitely there's a upskilling for everybody involved in the sustainable construction. For example, how to even have the waste management on site, how to take out the right method of taking out the waste from the site. It is all about awareness, creating a mindset. I think if everyone understands that, all the stakeholders know about it, it can really reach up to every person. And I think that can be the success of a project. So when we were talking about the upfront and the embodied carbon and maintenance and how you can create on-site, you can reduce those emissions. I think that's where awareness plays an important role at all levels.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, another question from architect Joshi Talukdar. She has asked, what is the impact of COVID-19 crisis on net zero?
So one of the important factor that COVID-19 has really made all of us aware is more about our roles to create more sustainability. So we were talking about the factors of the air quality, and also how do you create more thermal comfort. Comfort factor is also very important, and sustainability has always been an important area of discussion in all the forums. With COVID-19, I would say that we have to become more aware of our responsibilities in architects, and as I was talking about the IPCC and the climate change, it has really made us architects more aware of our roles that we should be doing in the future. Generation should also be aware of these factors, and it is an holistic approach. I would say it's just not about net zero, it's about making our buildings more user friendly, more comfortable, and comfortable for every user occupant. So that's something that I would like to say.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, with this, we come to the end of our question answer round. I hope the answers have cleared the doubts of our participants. Now, ma'am, I would like to request architect Hirokjyoti Bosso to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ankur sir. Uh, First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Bhakti More ma'am for today's wonderful session. And secondly, I would like to thank our Managing Trustee, Architect Abani Das sir, Daksha Das ma'am, CEO Sahil Das sir, and our Registrar, Dr. Yahya Mazumdar sir, and our Principal, Architect Digambar Das sir, and all the faculties and the dignitaries present today for our session. And lastly, I would also like to thank our students. And I hope this session will be very insightful and helpful to all of us attending today's session. And with that, I conclude today's vote of thanks. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Ma'am, with this, we come to the end of our today's session of our webinar series, that is the GCAP Insight. Thank you, ma'am.